I am very intrigued at the possible future that may be in store for interim head coach Dominique Ducharme and general manager Marc Bergevin. I was on the train that thought both of them probably wouldn't be back if the Canadiens somehow found a way to mess it up in the regular season and not make the playoffs. They're obviously in the playoffs. I also think maybe they might not be back if the Montreal Canadiens kind of don't play well against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They at least got the game one victory. So I'm very curious where you guys think Marc Bergevin and Dominique Ducharme will stand if the Montreal Canadiens don't make a deep playoff run. Have they done enough to keep their jobs for next season?
I expect them both back. And that was probably true even before last night. And it's a factor of what we're seeing now with the way they played last night. It's so hard to evaluate anything off this season, especially that latter part of the season after the COVID break, playing too many games. Ducharme never had a chance to practice with his team, settle things down. Now he's had the chance, and they looked damn good last night. They were totally prepared. You could tell after the first 5 minutes, this team came to play. They've got a plan. It's skate your ass off and hit. And they did it, and they did it from start to finish. And, you know, maybe he needed that game to come back, but I kind of felt like he was going to get more time even if he didn't. And Bergevin, you know, everybody says, well, 9 years, 10 years, whatever, without a cup. And I say, yeah, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is what's happened in the last year, the last 18 months. He's made a lot of really great moves. And it looked for a while like they didn't work out, but it looked that way because it was such a messed up season. And when you look at the moves individually, every one of them looks great, especially these 4 off-season moves that brought in Allen and Toffoli and everyone. It's hard to fire a guy that traded Max Domi and his sulking for Josh Anderson. I mean, Jesus.
Well, you know, Bergevin at the start said his goal was to make the playoffs. And, you know, the numbers tell us 3 games over 500 was their record. Calgary had 2 more wins than Montreal and didn't make playoffs. The bottom line, I think, right now for both these guys are if they're able to find a way to beat Toronto, obviously that's going to give them an opportunity, I think, to step in next year on hopefully a full year goal and see what they're able to do. But, you know, if you look at the numbers, it's not pretty, but, you know, they can save themselves by finding ways to have a little success in the playoffs and then give them an opportunity to maybe extend their contracts if they start well the following year.
I think the only way they weren't going to come back is if the Habs got blown out in this series against the Leafs, swept, not even competitive. That's not going to happen now, right? They won game 1. I think they're both going to be back. Yeah. Bergevin has 1 more year in his contract.
Yes, he does.
On Jeff Molson, I'm not rushing into giving him an extension. I don't think there's other teams around the NHL lining up to hire Marc Bergevin as their GM right now. Yeah. Let next season start. Let it play out a bit. Hopefully it'll be a regular season, a real training camp, which will give Ducharme an actual a start that he deserves to have. He got thrown into a horrible situation this season, like almost an unwinnable situation. Not even a practice before his first game as head coach. Yeah. Jeff Molson. They're both coming back. I'm not signing any contract extensions at this point. And let next season start. Let's see what Bergevin does during this offseason. And as the season moves forward next year, if it looks good, then you give him the extension. And if it doesn't, you let it play out to the end of the season, and then you decide. Yeah. Molson rushed into giving Bergevin the extension first time after he hired him, when I don't think it was really necessary. I don't think you should make that mistake again. As Jack said, Marc Bergevin, I thought he should have been fired before he started this reset rebuild. But when Molson decided not to fire him, you can't judge him now from what happened before. You can judge him from the day he started the reset. He's done some good things. He's done some bad things. And this is going to be another interesting offseason. But if he's as successful this offseason as he was last offseason, the Canadiens should be a better team next year. So I think they're both going to be back. But again, I think they should be back, but without any extension beyond next season, and let's see what happens.
One problem I see is that they've got a bit of a problem with Joel Bouchard, who's so good. You can't lose him. And if you're going to keep Ducharme, you can't bring him up. He maybe I don't know the situation. Maybe he's completely happy developing players down there. But man, this has been a sore point for how long? 20 years, and he seems to fix it. Brilliant coach on the way up. How long can you keep him down on the farm?
I wonder if Bouchard's not the GM in waiting for this team, though.
Yeah, a lot of people have put that out as well.
When they hired Ducharme as the assistant coach, he was hired as the next head coach. That was what it was. When Julian got fired, Ducharme was going to be the next head coach. And I wonder if the Bouchard was hired.
Yeah.
When Marc Bergevin were over, he's the next GM because it has to be a bilingual candidate. There's not a lot of them out there, and I'm wondering if that is the strategy that they have moving forward.
Yeah. Not to mention with Joel Bouchard, with just his track record to this point. I mean, yes, he's got the coaching under his belt, but you go back to his time in junior, coach, GM, president, everything. Worked with Hockey Canada on their management side. And even with the Laval Rocket, yes, they don't officially have a GM, but he's the guy talking with ECHL teams about different players and whatever. So he very much, whether or not he's admitted it or not, he definitely has an inkling to work on the managerial side. What I'm curious about is whether or not, the future for him is in Montreal as the general manager, and whether other teams genuinely have any interest in him at all. I'm still very curious about his ceiling. And I'll say about Dominique Ducharme, the more this year goes on and the more we look at how this team played in that stretch of time with all those games condensed in about 40 odd days, the more I'm inclined to believe that Dominique Ducharme will actually be back as head coach. This was a guy who did not get the benefit of the week off just before he was hired to kind of implement his system. And also, as Stu, as you've mentioned, just kind of sit down and take stock of the fact that, wow, I'm the coach of the Montreal Canadiens. He did not get that opportunity. You guys got to remember, one of the first games they had with the Winnipeg Jets during a morning skate where it's just supposed to be this basic little thing, they're doing power play drills. Like Dominique Ducharme and Alex Burrows, they had to do a lot of stuff on the fly. And another thing I'll bring up as well, when Michel Therrien got fired a couple of years ago, Claude Julien was out there, and the Montreal Canadiens took him up, and they said, all right, you are our guy. He was the clear alternative that was there, and the Canadiens were able to put him in. Right now, if the Montreal Canadiens were to let Dominique Ducharme go, who is going to step in and take over for Dominique Ducharme? If the Montreal Canadiens let go of Marc Bergevin, who is the clear GM candidate that could take over for? Are you calling Bob Hartley? Are you calling Patrick Roy? Do those options seem all that enticing to you? Are you calling someone in junior who is completely inexperienced or at least not as experienced enough as those guys? The alternatives to replacing those two guys, the more I really think about it here, and I know I've maybe kind of voiced the other side of this, but the more I think about it, the alternatives might not be as plentiful for the Montreal Canadiens, so it might at least be worth kind of keeping them around for another year.
Well, the other thing you got to factor into this, Julian, is that Jeff Molson's paying Claude Julien $5 million next season not to coach.
Yes.
This is a business. Jeff Molson's lost a lot of money on the Canadiens.
In a pandemic.
No fans, in a pandemic. So is he going to pay Claude Julien $5 million not to coach, pay Marc Bergevin whatever he's paying him next season not to be the GM, plus pay whoever else you hire to come in? I think that factors into it. And you talk about candidates. There's not a lot of bilingual candidates out there for GM. The top of my list would be Matthew Darche, but is he going to want to leave Tampa? And is Julien Brisebois going to want to let him leave Tampa? They're like this. They're old McGill buddies. They go back a long way. There's not a lot of guys out there, and that's why I think with Bouchard, he might have been hired to coach the Rocket and be the GM and waiting for the Canadiens.
Yeah, and and if their mindset is we got to have bilingual in there, obviously, like you said, very, very limited numbers, and if they continue on that note, they're going to have a tough job finding guys that want to come in this environment and have to be bilingual. That's the bottom line. That I believe will never change.
Well, we'll have to wait and see on that. Write in the comment section if you think Dominique Ducharme and Marc Bergevin will be back with the Montreal Canadiens or if they won't. And subscribe to our YouTube channel here so you can get more episodes, more great content. I don't know how many other episodes we'll have with Jack Todd, but he's in some old ones. You can always go back. Okay, no more jokes about Jack Todd. Also visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out our full episode.